The sky was full of fire. Ash rained down like snow. Smoke covered everything. The human soldier, Captain Ray Mercer, limped through the ruins, one hand pressed against his bleeding leg. His helmet was cracked. His weapon was gone. The battlefield was silent now, too silent. Enemy had moved on, leaving behind only fire and broken buildings. Ray knew he wouldn't last long. His water was gone. His leg was getting worse. His squad was gone, too, killed in the last blast. He looked around, hoping to find something, anything. Then he heard it. A sound. Not metal. Not footsteps. Not a machine. It was soft, fragile. A tiny voice crying out from the rubble. Please. Ray froze. He wasn't sure if it was real. Maybe it was the pain. Maybe the smoke was messing with his mind. But the voice came again, louder this time. Please, someone. He turned toward a collapsed wall, the stone still hot from fire. He limped closer, pushed aside a cracked beam, and beneath a pile of broken bricks, he saw her, a child, small, blue-skinned, eyes wide with fear. Alien, she looked maybe 5 years old, covered in dust and ash. Her arms trembled as she tried to crawl out. Her knees were scraped. Her thin dress was torn. She was breathing fast, like a trapped animal. Ray dropped to one knee, wincing in pain. It's okay, he said softly, raising both hands. I'm not here to hurt you. She blinked, stared at him. Her lips trembled. Then she whispered again, her voice barely louder than the wind. Will you be my father? The words hit him harder than any explosion. Ray didn't know what to say. He didn't even know this child's name. Why would she call him that? She think he was someone else? Was she lost? Abandoned? Left behind? He reached forward slowly. I'm going to get you out of there. She didn't move. He pulled away more debris using his bare hands. Every movement burned. His muscles screamed, but he kept going, brick by brick, piece by piece, until finally he cleared enough space to reach her. Come on, little one, he said, his voice gentle. She crawled out slowly, one hand clinging to his arm. She was so light, so cold. Her fingers were like ice. Ray took off his jacket and wrapped it around her tiny shoulders. What's your name? He asked. She didn't answer. She just kept looking up at him with those huge, watery eyes. He picked her up carefully and held her close. She didn't resist. She just curled against his chest and stayed quiet. Ray looked around. The smoke was getting thicker. The heat was rising again. Buildings were collapsing, one after another. He had to move. Fast, there was a small tunnel ahead, drained from the city's sewers. He'd seen it before during the recon. It wasn't safe, but it was cover. He carried the child through the rubble, down into the tunnel, and away from the fire. Inside, it was dark and wet. The air smelled bad, but it was better than burning. Ray sat down, back against the wall, the girl still wrapped. In his coat? She hadn't spoken again. She just stared at him. You don't have to be scared, he said. You're safe now. Won't let anyone hurt you. Her eyes blinked slowly, then she leaned her head against his chest and closed her eyes. Ray sat there, stunned. He had no food, no medicine, no backup. He didn't even know how many enemies were still out there. But somehow, none of that mattered now, because this little girl had asked him something he didn't expect. She hadn't asked for water. She hadn't begged for help. She asked for a father, and now, looking at her so small, so broken, he realized something inside him had shifted. This wasn't just a child from an alien world. This wasn't just a survivor. She had no one, and for some reason, she had chosen him. Ray looked down at the girl, her tiny hands clinging to his coat like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Maybe he couldn't save the world, but maybe he could save her. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathed in the smoky air, and whispered back, Yes, I'll stay. And in that broken, burning world, the soldier who had nothing left suddenly found something worth protecting. Asterisk, the tunnel walls were cold and wet. Drops of water fell from the cracked ceiling, echoing through the silence like soft footsteps. Captain Ray Mercer sat in the shadows, holding the small alien girl tightly in his arms. She hadn't spoken since those words, "Will you be my father?" She hadn't let go either. The world above them was still burning. Every now and then a distant explosion shook the ground. Ray's leg throbbed with pain, but he didn't care. The girl's head rested against his chest, and that was all that mattered right now. Then suddenly, she began to shiver. Ray looked down. Her body trembled under his jacket. Her skin, blue and delicate, was icy to the touch. Her eyes stayed closed, but her lips had turned pale. She was freezing, even in his arms. He cursed under his breath and pulled her closer, but it wasn't enough.
Oh.
She needed heat, food, water, something to hold her together. He reached into his survival pouch and pulled out the last thing he had. Small metal flask. Inside it was the final few drops of water he had saved for himself. He stared at it. His throat burned. His lips were dry. But the girl's breathing was getting slower, her tiny fingers twitching with weakness. Ray didn't think. He unscrewed the cap and gently touched the flask to her lips. She didn't open her eyes. "Come on," he whispered. "Drink it." She stirred barely. Then her mouth moved and she took the water. Just a few drops, but enough to make her let out a small sigh. She fell asleep again, still holding his coat. Ray leaned back against the wall, the empty flask in his hand, his own thirst now worse than ever. But he didn't regret it. Outside, something moved. Ray froze. He held the girl tighter and listened. There it was, again, metal clanking, footsteps echoing above the tunnel. Someone or something was searching the ruins. Ray shifted the girl into one arm and reached for a broken pipe lying nearby. It wasn't a weapon, but it was better than nothing. The sounds grew louder. Boots. Voices in a language he didn't recognize. Then, flashlight beam passed over the tunnel entrance. Ray pulled the girl tighter and slid behind a broken slab of stone. He held his breath. "They've got lights," he whispered in his mind. "They're sweeping." The beam paused at the tunnel. The men above said something, then moved on. But they would be back. They were hunting survivors. And if they found, or if they recognized her, they would take her. Or worse, Ray couldn't stay here. He had to move. He waited for the sounds to fade, then stood up with the girl in his arms. His legs screamed with pain, but he didn't stop. The tunnel stretched. Ahead into darkness, no maps, no guide. Just endless shadow. But anywhere was better than here. He walked, step by step, hour by hour. At one point, the girl woke. She looked up at him with sleepy eyes. "You're still here," she whispered. "I said I would be," Ray answered. She gave a weak smile, then rested her head on his shoulder again. He kept walking. Finally, faint light appeared in the distance. Ray followed it, hoping it wasn't another fire. But as he got closer, he realized it wasn't flames, it was a cracked wall. Glowing from sunlight beyond, he pushed through the broken bricks and stepped into a small, half-destroyed greenhouse. There were plants here. Alien crops, dry and dying, but alive. More importantly, there was a small tank in the corner, catching rainwater through a hole in the roof. Water. Ray stumbled forward, filled the flask, and poured it gently into the girl's mouth. This time, she drank fully. Her eyes opened wider. Color returned to her face. She looked at him, confused. "Why do you help me?" Ray knelt beside her. "Because someone has to. Because you asked me to be your father." She stared at him. Then she reached up and touched his face. "I think you really are," she said softly. Ray didn't answer. He just smiled, even though his eyes were wet. But before he could relax, a noise came from outside the greenhouse. Boots, voices. This time they were close. Ray's eyes locked on the side door. He grabbed the girl and ducked behind a pile of fallen plants. A figure stepped inside. Scanning the area, the enemy had found them. And this time, there was no tunnel to run through. Ray held the girl close and whispered, "No matter what happens, I won't let them take you." Ray didn't breathe. The soldier at the door stepped deeper into the broken greenhouse. His rifle raised, scanning side to side. His boots crunched over dry leaves. Behind him, 2 more followed. Their armor was silver, marked with sharp alien symbols. These weren't rebels or bandits. They were official forces from her side. The little girl clutched Ray's shirt tightly. She didn't make a sound, but he could feel her heartbeat racing against his chest. She knew who these men were, and she was afraid of them. Ray didn't have a real weapon. It's just a bent pipe and a rusted knife he found in the sewer. It wouldn't be enough. The lead soldier stopped right in front of their hiding spot. He turned his head slightly, then raised a small scanner. A green light flickered across the room. Ray's blood ran cold. The scanner gave a soft beep. The soldier narrowed his eyes. They were exposed. Suddenly, before the soldier could call out, Ray jumped forward and slammed the pipe into his arm. The scanner flew from his hand. The second soldier raised his weapon, but the girl screamed. It was sharp, loud, fearful. The moment of confusion was enough. Ray kicked over a pile of debris, grabbed the girl, and bolted through a side opening. In the greenhouse wall, the soldiers shouted behind him. Bullets and energy rounds tore through the air. Glass exploded around them, but Ray didn't stop. He ran into the trees behind the old structure, ducking low. Weaving between branches, the girl clung to him, silent again, her face buried in his neck. The forest was dense and strange. The leaves glowed faint blue, and small floating insects blinked like stars. Ray didn't care. He just kept moving. Minutes passed, maybe hours. The voices faded. Only when his legs gave out did Ray collapse behind a thick tree, breathing hard. His wounded leg throbbed, his body ached. But they were alive. The girl sat beside him, her eyes wide. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Ray smiled faintly, though sweat covered his face. "It's not too bad. You didn't leave me," she whispered. "Never." Looked down. Then she said something strange. "They weren't looking for both of us. It's just me." Ray turned his head. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. She just touched her neck. There, under the collar of his coat, was a faded mark shaped like a code, like a brand. Ray's stomach twisted. "They weren't soldiers," he said slowly. "They were retrieval agents." She nodded. He realized it now. She hadn't just escaped war. She had escaped something worse, maybe. A lab, a prison, or an experiment. And they wanted her back. He reached out and held her hand. "Then we have to stay ahead of them." The girl nodded again. "You're the only one who didn't want to sell me or use me." Ray's fists tightened. "Not everyone is like that," he said. "Not all humans. Not all aliens. You just met the worst first." She leaned against him, tired again. "I believe you." Ray knew they couldn't stop long, but he had to think. They were being hunted by her kind now. What about his? Hi. He had a beacon hidden in his gear, one last signal. That could call for help from his base. But if they found her ID code, the humans might see her as dangerous too. A threat. Something to capture. He was stuck between 2 fires. He looked at the girl, now fast asleep against his shoulder. He couldn't trust either side, not anymore. The only one he could trust was her. And she only had him. Night fell slowly. Alien moons rose between the trees, casting pale light on the forest floor. Ray made a small shelter from leaves and broken branches. He wrapped the girl in his coat again, then sat guard beside her with the rusted knife in hand in the dark. Something rustled nearby. He raised the blade. A figure stepped out from the trees, this time not armored. It was a human scout. "Ray Mercer?" the man asked. "We picked up your emergency signal earlier today. You're listed as missing." Ray stood up slowly. "You're from the base?" "Yes. I've got a med team waiting. You look like you need it." Ray looked back at the sleeping girl. The scout followed his eyes. "Who's the kid?" Ray's voice stayed firm. "My daughter." The scout raised an eyebrow. "She's not human." "She's still my daughter," Ray said again, louder this time. The scout stepped closer. "We'll need to scan her, no?" Ray snapped. "Orders are orders." Ray stepped between the man and the girl, knife still raised. "Until your orders, she stays with me." The forest was quiet. Finally, the scout nodded slowly. "All right, Captain, but once we get back, there'll be questions." Ray didn't care. He looked down at the sleeping girl again. Whatever questions came, he would answer them all, because now she was his asterisk. The human base was clean, white and cold. Ray hated it. Bright lights buzzed overhead. Every step, every wall smelled like chemicals and control. He walked through it slowly, carrying the small alien girl in his arms. She was wrapped in a blanket now, eyes wide as she stared at the humans around her. Some looked curious, others looked nervous. A few just looked away. They were afraid of her. Ray could feel it. The scout who found them led him to a private room. There was a bed, some food on the table, and a silent camera in the corner. The door locked behind them. The girl didn't say anything. She hadn't spoken since they entered the gates. Ray sat her on the bed. She looked around, then pulled the blanket over her head. He sat across from her and opened the food tray. Steam rose from the soup. He picked up a spoon and held it out. "Come on, you need to eat." She peeked out, but didn't take it. "Do you trust me?" Ray asked softly. She nodded, then eat. Ah. She took the spoon slowly, brought it to her lips, and tasted it. Then, faster. Within minutes, the bowl was empty. Ray smiled. "You're getting stronger." She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and looked at him. "What's your name?" he asked. She paused, then looked down. "I don't know." Ray blinked. "You don't remember?" She shook her head. "They never called me by a name. Only a number." His chest tightened. "What number?" she whispered. "Subject 13. Ray leaned back. That wasn't a name, that was a tag. Lab code. He felt sick. She had no name, no family, no identity. She was just a test to someone. Ray stood up and walked to the door. He banged on it. The guard outside opened it slightly. "Need to speak to command?" Ray said. "Tomorrow," the guard replied. "They're still deciding what to do with her." Ray stepped closer. "She's a child. Not a thing to decide about." The guard didn't answer. Let's close the door again. Ray returned to the girl. She was lying on the bed now, staring at the ceiling. "I don't want to go with them." She whispered. "You won't," he said. "I promise. But they'll try. Then I'll fight them." She looked at him, eyes shining. "Why?" He knelt beside her. "Because you're mine now. You chose me. And I chose you." She smiled just a little. Ray saw paper and crayons on the desk. Gift for her, maybe. He brought them over and placed them beside her. "Want to draw?" She nodded shyly. He watched as she picked up a blue crayon and began to sketch. Lines formed a small house, a tree, 2 figures holding hands. "That's you," she said, pointing to the taller one. "And the small one?" "Me," he smiled. "What should I call you?" She thought for a moment, then said, "Can you give me a name?" Ray hesitated and remembered. Something his sister's name. She had died young during a sickness, but she was kind, sweet, and brave. He whispered, "Lena." The girl repeated it. "Lena. It means light," he said. She beamed. "Then I want to be Lena." Ray felt a tear in his eye. He looked away before she could see. Suddenly, the door opened. 2 officers stepped in. One was human. The other an alien in silver robes. The alien spoke first. "That child belongs to the Galactic Research Council. She must be returned for containment and observation." Ray stood between them and Lena. "She's not going anywhere." The human officer said, "Captain Mercer, we understand your emotional attachment, but this is bigger than you. The girl has data in her blood. She could be dangerous." "She's a child," Ray shouted. "She's not a weapon, not a virus, not some lab rat. She's Lena," the alien officer said calmly. "Her name is Subject 13. Lena flinched behind Ray. "She has a name now," Ray growled. "And she has a father." The officers stepped forward. Lena grabbed Ray's hand. He looked down at her, then back at the officers. "If you want to take her," he said, his voice like steel, "you'll have to go through me." The room went silent. Finally, the human officer said, "You've just made this harder on yourself, Captain. They left the room, but Ray knew what that meant. Tomorrow, they'd come back with force. He sat beside Lena and took her hand. "No matter what happens," he whispered, "I'll never let them take you." She leaned into him and closed her eyes, and for the first time she whispered, "Good night, Dad." The night passed slowly, like cold water dripping through cracks. Lena slept curled up in Ray's jacket, her hand still wrapped tightly around his finger. Ray didn't sleep at all, sat near the locked door, eyes fixed on the small clock. Above it, ticking loudly in the silence. Every tick was a warning. They were coming back for her. He had seen the look in there. Eyes the officers. Cold final. They didn't see a little girl. Saw a lab sample. It's something to control, study, maybe even destroy if it became inconvenient. Ray couldn't let that happen. When the lights dimmed at 0400, signaling base-wide night mode, he stood up. It was time. He opened the hidden panel in the wall near the flora. Technician had once shown him this emergency hatch during his old patrol days. It was rarely used, barely wide enough for one person. But it led to the maintenance. Tunnel beneath the base. Ray gently lifted Lena into his arms. She stirred. "Dad," he whispered. "We're leaving." Right now, she blinked, confused, but calm. "They'll chase us." "Let them," he said, his voice steady. "We're not stopping." He pulled the hatch open, then crawled in with Lena on his back. The tunnel was narrow and dark, filled with old wires and dust. It felt like crawling through the throat of a dead machine. They moved slowly, careful not to make noise. Twice he paused as footsteps passed above them. Guards were on patrol. Ray's arms ached, his injured leg dragged, but he kept going. At the end of the tunnel was a rusted metal grate. Beyond his outside air, he kicked the grate open with his boot, and cold wind rushed in. They crawled out into the open night. The world beyond the base was quiet. The stars above twinkled through a clear sky. Ray spotted a single shuttle hidden beneath. Supply tarp near the old cargo yard, something he remembered being decommissioned months ago. Perfect. Ray ran for it. Lena held on tight, her head resting against his shoulder. "Where will we go?" "Far. From here, somewhere safe." He reached the shuttle and tore off the tarp. The engine was dusty, the console flickering weakly. But it powered on. Ray placed Lena in the co-pilot seat and strapped her in. "Hold on," he whispered. Then the searchlight hit them. An alarm blared. The shuttle's sensor howled with movement detection. Guards shouted in the distance. The base was awake. Ray slammed the ignition. The shuttle coughed, then roared to life. It rose shakily from the ground just as bullets and blaster fire slammed into its hull. "Don't look back," Ray told Lena. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. He grinned, heart pounding, and pushed the throttle forward. The shuttle broke into the sky, lights behind them shrinking as they soared into the clouds. But the escape wasn't over. Ray tapped into the nav screen. The route to the neutral border, the zone outside all war claims, was just 30 miles away. But between them and freedom was a dangerous path. Unclaimed skies full of drones, storms, and unstable gravity fields. Ray narrowed his eyes and flew straight into it. Lightning cracked around the shuttle. Rain hit the glass. System flashed warnings in red dot. Lena gripped his hand. "We can make it, right?" "Yes," he said. "We're almost free." Then the shuttle rocked violently. A drone had locked onto them. Ray swerved hard, diving low. Through the storm, the drone followed, firing red beams that scorched their tail. He flew into a narrow ravine, hoping to break its signal. The shuttle scraped against stone. Sparks flew. Alarms screamed. Lena cried out, "Dad! I've got you!" He jerked the controls. The shuttle shot upward, clearing the ravine's edge just as the drone clipped a cliff and exploded behind them. Silence, only heavy breathing, only wind, only stars. Ray looked ahead and saw at the beacon tower, the neutral zone. He tapped a code. A. Green light answered. He turned to Lena. "We made it." She didn't smile. She just reached out and held his face in her tiny hands. "No one's ever fought for me like that." Ray kissed her forehead. No one's ever needed me like you. He landed the shuttle gently near a refugee outpost in the mountains. As he carried Lena down the ramp, a medical officer rushed forward. She's not in the system, the medic said. What's her name? Ray didn't hesitate. Lena Mercer. The medic blinked. She's your daughter? Then welcome to the border of hope. Ray looked down at Lena, safe in his arms. For the first time, she wasn't hiding. For the first time. He wasn't alone. The outpost was peaceful on the outside, but Ray knew better. It was quiet because people were scared. It was calm because everyone had lost something. This was the border of hope, a name painted on every sign, but it felt more like the edge of nowhere. Refugees from 100 planets lived in small shelters, watched by guards in gray armor. The air smelled like metal, medicine, and rain. Ray sat on the edge of Lena's bed, holding her hand. She was asleep again, her breath soft and slow. The doctor said she was strong but tired. Her body had gone through too much. Her mind was still healing. Ray watched her chest rise and fall. She had chosen him, and now he had to protect her again. There was a knock at the door. Ray stood up, tense. Come in. 2 people entered. One was a high-ranking human officer, tall and calm, dressed in black. The other was a pale alien woman, her silver eyes sharp. Her uniform had no weapons, but Ray felt like she didn't need any. The woman stepped forward. I am Envoy Sale, Galactic Council representative. You are Captain Ray Mercer. I was, he answered. She nodded. We are not here to arrest you. Ray raised an eyebrow. But we are here to offer you a choice. The officer spoke next. You crossed military lines? You took a classified subject from a secure base? That's a crime. Ray stayed silent. But, the envoy added, we understand what happened. We know she's just a child. We know the pain she has seen. She's not a test subject, Ray said. She's my daughter. Biologically, no, said the officer. Emotionally, absolutely, Ray snapped. The envoy nodded slowly. That is why we're giving you 2 options. Ray crossed his arms. Go on. First option, she said. You return Lena to the Galactic Council. We promise she will not be harmed. We will study her condition, her mind, her blood, and give her comfort. No, Ray said at once. Let me finish, Sale said. In exchange, your charges will be dropped. You'll be released, free to live anywhere within the Federation. Ray shook his head. And the second option. The human officer stepped forward. You keep the girl. No labs, no separation. Ray's eyes narrowed. What's the catch? You both vanish, the officer said. You give up your name, your rank, your past. You become someone else. No Federation, no council, no protections, no help. Ray glanced at Lena, still asleep. She'd grow up as a ghost, he asked. She'd grow up free, the envoy said, but hidden. Ray turned away and ran a hand through his hair. Both choices were traps. One took her away forever. The other buried them both in shadows, but he knew the answer already. He sat beside Lena again, you know. He said quietly, she asked me to be her father before I even knew her name. The envoy looked down. She didn't care who I was, Ray went on. She just wanted someone to stay. He stood up again, stronger now, so I'm staying. The officer sighed. Then you accept Exile? Ray nodded, as long as she's safe. The envoy stepped forward and handed him a chip. This will lead you to a safe house. Transport leaves in 1 hour. After that, you disappear. They turned to leave, but Sale paused at the door. One day, she said, the galaxy will remember her, and you. Ray gave a quiet smile. Counting on it. Later that night, the shuttle took off. No flags, no records. No destination on the map. Only Ray and Lena. Together again in silence. She woke as the engines hummed. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere new, Ray said. Will I still be Lena Mercer? You always will be. She smiled. And you'll still be my dad? He squeezed her hand forever. She leaned her head on his arm. Then I'm not scared anymore. The stars moved past the window. Ray looked ahead into the unknown. No name, no title, no army, just a father and a daughter. And that was more than enough. The village didn't exist on any map. It was deep in the green valleys of an old moon, where wild trees grew tall and the rivers ran clear. No soldiers came here. No machines flew overhead. The sky belonged to the stars, and the land belonged. To those who wanted to forget the past, Ray and Lena had lived there for 6 months. Their house was small. It's built with his own hands wooden walls, stone steps, a roof that creaked when it rained. There was a swing outside, tied to a tree with bright red rope. Lena called it her cloud seat. She was different now. She laughed more. She ran barefoot in the grass. Her eyes sparkled when she saw birds or chased tiny blue butterflies. Wore a dress made by the village women and a necklace Ray carved from a broken engine part. But what Ray noticed most was her smile. She smiled without fear, and that was everything. One morning, Ray stood in the garden pulling weeds. The sun was warm. His back ached from the work, but it was the good kind of pain. Real, honest. Dad turned. Lena came running from the house, waving something in her hand. A letter, she said, breathless. It came with the supply drone. Ray took it gently. It was a folded note, plain and unmarked. He opened it and read silently. Captain Mercer, your name is gone. Your face is forgotten. But your story reached us. She is safe. We will make sure no one comes. You did the right thing, old friendry. Smiled faintly and folded the note again. Was it from someone bad? Lena asked. No, he said. Someone good. Someone who knows we're free now. Lena jumped up and hugged him. I'm glad we came here, me too. They walked back toward the house. Lena skipped ahead, then paused. Dad, yes, she pointed at the hill behind their home. Can we build something up there? Ray raised an eyebrow. Like, what? Like, a small place for others, for kids like me, who have no name, no home. Ray looked at her proud and quiet. You want to help them? She nodded. You helped me. He walked up the hill with her. From the top, they could see everything: fields, rivers, the edge of the woods. Birds flew overhead, singing in the wind. He knelt down beside her. All right, he said. Let's build it together. They spent the next weeks gathering wood. The villagers helped too. A carpenter offered tools. A retired nurse brought extra blankets. Even the village kids joined in, painting stars on the walls. Lena chose the name, House of Names. When asked why, she said, because everyone deserves one. The first child arrived a month later. He was quiet, small, with golden eyes and scarred arms. Lena held his hand and showed him where to sleep. She gave him a blanket and told him, You're safe now. Ray watched from the doorway. He knew the world beyond their hill was still broken, still cold. But here's this little patch of land was healing. One morning he woke to the smell of breakfast. Lena stood at the stove, wearing an apron too big for her, stirring something that looked like blue eggs and thick bread. Happy home day, she said proudly. Home day. Ray laughed. What's that? She grinned. It's been 1 whole year since you became my dad. Ray walked over and hugged her tight. Then it's the best day ever. They sat outside, eating on the porch steps. Watching the sun rise over the valley, other children played near the swing. Ray looked down at Lena, who was now drawing in her sketchbook. On the page was a picture, him, her, and the other kids. Underneath, she had written in big, bold letters, We are not forgotten. Ray felt his eyes sting. Not from pain, but from peace. He had once been a soldier, a man made for war. Now he was a father, a builder, a protector of smiles. Lena looked up and whispered, Thank you for staying. Ray smiled back. Thank you. For asking me to. The wind moved softly through the trees, and somewhere beyond the stars, the war continued. But down here, in a quiet place with a wooden house and a hill full of laughter, one little girl had found a future, and one broken man had found his heart again.